So, what is our plan or your plan when it's determined that the social media and mainstream media are no longer safe and are obviously no longer factual? Hey, folks, this is Travis here at the Prepared Homestead. Thank you for stopping to watch. And this is a subject that, well, we've known about for a long time. We've all talked about it. We've all seen it spoken of for years now. This is nothing new to say that mainstream media is full of falsehoods and just hoaxes and fake and absolute outright lies, and that social media, the internet, it's becoming difficult for the truth to get out because of so much censorship. This is something that's been a pretty big subject over the last few months, especially looking back at the information that was trying to get banned, shadow banned, censored from this health crisis that we've been going through. And now here we are to a very heated election, and we're seeing it even more so. And I believe, this is really just my opinion, that those that are in control of these media outlets have probably made some sort of decision, or it's within their plan, that once the election happened, I think that the gloves are off. I think that their motive to censor and to keep from any truth being said or any opinions that fall within the kind of patriot conservative category. I think that it's now viewed that this is their time, and they are going to do everything they can to keep from any of that sort of information being spread. And I think we're seeing that in the news with what's happening with this election. It doesn't really matter who you stand for. And this is the something that I have been saying for a couple of days to a few people, is that, even if you're a Joe Biden supporter, let's say you went out and you voted for him and you truly support him and believe that he is the better of the two candidates. Every American should be seeing right now what's happening. And don't just listen to just one side. Listen to all sides and determine for yourself the truth, because there are definitely instances and cases that have happened over the last few days of fraudulent activity. I don't see how anyone rationally thinking, critically thinking, can look at some of these scenarios and these situations that we're finding and say that, oh, that's okay, that's normal, oh, it's not a big deal. One of the things that the America has been very proud of over her time is that we have strong elections, that our elections are safe, our elections are free, and our election process can be trusted. And that is something that most other nations that have tried some form of democracy have failed in, is always the election process. It's been so easy for most other countries to manipulate and control that. And here we are in a situation that there is blatant fraud in some cases, and it might be small in some areas, but if you can pinpoint certain small things that are happening, then the logical conclusion is that there could be more things happening widespread. And the media, the news media, that really has an obligation to the American people to tell the truth, to show both sides, seem to be working in overtime to keep that from happening. And we're also seeing that online. We're seeing that within the social media platforms, that they are doing everything they can to shut people up. And I believe it's not just the truth about what might be happening with the election process. I think it's everything. They've shown over the past few months that they have no shame whatsoever when it comes to censoring and from killing free speech. And I think that, like I said, Regardless of whether you like Joe Biden, supported him, or voted for him or not, the left, maybe not necessarily him, but the hard radicalized left has seen this election as a sign for them to take the gloves off and to, march and push full speed ahead. It's happening here on YouTube. The reason why I started thinking about this in the last few days, I've been talking with a few other fellow YouTube channel creators. I think 5 or 6 total. And most all of them were bigger than me. And most all of them, I think, but 1 or 2 had the same type of content that I put out. And we've all been talking about how they're censoring our content since November 3rd. It seems to be strange. I mean, we can't absolutely prove it, but we know what is consistent with our channel. We know how the averages work, how our average views, our average subscriber count every day, and then all of a sudden it's like someone pushed it off a cliff on November 3rd and it's in a downward spiral. To give you an example here on my channel, for those of you that's been watching for a while, you probably noticed that it's been kind of growing rapidly. Over the past 30 days, I have been averaging probably somewhere between 150 and 200 new subscribers every day. A few days a little less than that, but that's been a pretty consistent average over the last 30 days. My view count has been pretty high, going up for the size of my channel. It's been doing really good. And then come November 3rd, and it was like someone threw the emergency brake on. And since then, my subscriber count has been going in the negative at a rate of between 25 and 50 a day since November 3rd. And although I'm still getting just as positive comments as ever on the content that I'm putting out, my daily view count is less than half of what it was last week. Maybe my content is really that awful, but I find it hard to believe that with a subject so prominent in everyone's mind right now as this election, that these YouTube channels, mine and others that might be talking about it, are actually losing views. So we all believe that there is an effort on the part of YouTube to kind of throttle back the information that we're putting out. We're not saying or doing anything that they can, use their guidelines to completely remove our content, but they're demonetizing stuff, and they're obviously doing things within their algorithm to keep our content from being seen. And it's a common practice of YouTube of just removing subscribers. So if you're watching this, you've been a subscriber, you should check, because you may not be any longer. And that's YouTube's way of trying to slow a channel down. It's happening on Facebook. It's happening on Twitter. We all know about this stuff. We hear about it all the time. The problem is if we're hearing about it so much and doing nothing about it, we become complacent. And we just like, well, that's just how it is, right? That's just what happens. And we can't allow that, because we're in really a different world than we once were here in America. We are in what I believe, at the very, very least, an ideological civil war. And I've said before, we've seen skirmishes, and there could be more widespread of that. Even our founding fathers talked about how that the only way that this nation would really survive and thrive would be through regular revolutions. And I'm not advocating for violence, but I am telling you that it's getting pretty doggone close to the point that the only way to save this, meaning this country, from this communist Marxist push, is a revolution. That being said, if we are truly in that stage of our history, then how can we continually depend on the enemy to be used to disperse our information? I'm not saying that, you should get off of all these forms of media and not listen to them, because quite frankly, it's difficult to find the alternatives. But I think that is something as preppers, and they're like herding cats sometimes, preppers and patriots and conservatives and constitutionalists and stuff, we're like herding cats. But at some point, if we want any kind of success, and to be able to prevail over this very dangerous enemy of this communist Marxist ideology and globalist new world order, we have to at some point realize we can no longer use these platforms as means of communication and disseminating our information. I'm not telling you all this to tell you that I'm going to get off of YouTube. I will be on YouTube as long as I'm capable of. But I do believe that at some point, I'm either going to have to whitewash all of my content or just no longer be here. I do have accounts on BitChute, which is a YouTube-like platform, and another one, Brighteon, I believe that's how it's pronounced. They are both similar to YouTube, but they're just not as good. And there's not very many people over there, so I don't post there as often. It may get to the point that I need to, or find some other alternative. The same way with Facebook and Twitter. They're all alternatives, but they're not that good. They just aren't that good. And we as a people, we as a government, have created a situation that has allowed these platforms to have so much power over the information that's been spread. And I'm sure many of you, if not all of you, could tell similar stories over the past weeks and months of talking with friends and family and neighbors and coworkers of people that absolutely believe that they know that this is the facts, when in fact it's not. And the reason why they believe it's fact is because that's what they heard on Facebook, or that's what they heard on Twitter. And Facebook and Twitter or YouTube is not allowing them to see the other side, or at least making it very difficult. And in the end, you have a large population of people that don't have quite the critical thinking skills that they probably should have. And so they're just believing the information that they're being told without actually digging into it. They're not actually looking into what the truth is. They hear a sound bite from a presidential candidate. They hear a sound bite from a TV news anchor. They see a fact checker from Facebook, and they just believe it because, well, those places wouldn't lie. Those people wouldn't lie to us, right? I mean, why would a fact checker from Facebook? I mean, that's what they do. They get people that only tell the truth, right? I mean, why would these news anchors on a major nationwide or international news agency lie to me? I mean, they have an obligation to tell me the truth, right? So most people see that and they just believe it. You and I know that that's not the truth. You and I know that these different forms of media are not just in the back pocket of communist, Marxist, elitist, but they're probably, at least, at the very least, in the passenger seat, helping that train go along. I mean, they're like the navigators. I think it used to be believed that they were just pawns for those elites, but I think that they are much more in a control seat than what we think. These news agencies, these platforms, the media in general, they're not just, I don't think, quite the pawns that we think they are. And the stuff that they're saying, the stuff that they're putting out, the stuff that they're censoring, I would think that the average thinking person could rationally and logically look at it and say, this doesn't make sense. But we're dealing with a citizenry that have been dumbed down for the last few generations. We're dealing with them that have become so engulfed in the social media and high technology that is available at their fingertips, that they've lost that ability to critically think and to look at a situation and try to determine for themselves what the truth is instead of just believing what they're being told. At some point, we have to realize that it is no longer safe to be using these. I don't have the idea. I don't have the solution. Over my Patreon channel last week, I was talking about prepper comms and things like portable radios, ham radios, CB radios, that kind of stuff, but also shortwave. That is something that in the past was used in the Patriot movement back in the 80s and 90s, and probably even further back from that. And that's where I got started. But they're not there anymore because everyone's online. But at some point, the internet may not be the place for it. And then what do we do? Do we end up like Orwell's movie 1984, where we're just so absolutely controlled that we're trying to eke out one little iota of freedom? Or do we do it now before it gets to that point? Stand our ground and bring this battle now to where we can have an actual chance of winning it. Because once we get to the point like it is in 1984, we've already greatly lost and have substantially reduced our chances of ever being victorious over a system like that. And that's the system that is gradually, every day, being created and being pushed upon us. So at some point, we have to realize that these platforms, these mediums that we are using, are no longer safe for us. And while we're still using them, we need to, I believe, throw as much support behind those that are actually out there speaking the truth. If you're subscribed to my channel and many of the others, because I'm not saying only listen to me, listen to other people also. Check and see if you are subscribed. YouTube has, like I said, they have a way of just removing your subscription from a channel. Get behind those guys. The same way with other medias, because it's becoming quite apparent that mainstream sources that are massively corporately owned are just absolutely no longer trusted sources. We can no longer depend upon things like Twitter and Facebook and YouTube and cable news networks to be the way that we communicate and find out the truth. We have to start finding other ways because once they completely and absolutely control them, then what do we do? Then how do we communicate? Then how do we find the truth? We don't at that point because we've put all our eggs in their basket. And we've over the years not continually developed ways to communicate. There are wealthy people just like Mark Zuckerberg in the past that could have developed it, but we didn't. We stood back and we allowed the left to absolutely take control of all forms of media, and we have to start thinking of alternatives because I believe that they have upped the game just since the election because I'm hearing about it all over. It's all over Facebook, Twitter, and just watching mainstream news. I don't know how anyone could watch it and not see the absolute complete bias. It doesn't even matter if you support the president or not. I'm not a fanboy of Trump, and I can see blatantly how they absolutely favor Biden and how they absolutely cannot stand him and disrespect him. And again, I'm no Trump fanboy. All right, guys and gals, let me know what you think. Your suggestions are always helpful. I encourage you to like and subscribe to the channel and maybe even share it around if you feel so inclined. Thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.